about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin Jovan.
What up, guys? Welcome to Week 13's NFL Pick'em. We're gonna obviously pick our games for Week 13, and we're gonna choose our winners as well as our lock and our upset for the week. Devin's overall, I should say, last week Devin did pretty well at 3-2. I did terrible last week. I was I was 1-4. So obviously we're aiming for a better week this week. But I was still obviously able to stay over the 500 mark. My season total is 31-29. Devin's is Devins is 37-23 for the season. So we're gonna jump right into this, and our first matchup for Week 13 is in divisional matchup. Should be a good game. It's between the Colts and the Texans. They always have pretty close games, regardless of how good or bad one of the teams is. So who you got this week for Colts and Texans?
This is going to be a good matchup. My thing is, what's going to hurt the Texans is obviously losing their most productive receiver in Will Fuller due to, him shooting up them PEDs, know what I'm saying? So maybe that's why he was having a good year. Who knows? But I'm rolling with the Texans and my guy Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson has been balling out the last couple of weeks since, Romeo Crennel has taken over the head coaching gig in Houston. The team has turned around big time. They've been winning, actually, so that's a first for Houston this season. But they also been playing some tough matchups, and that's kind of where their losses in his tenure as an interim head coach has come from. So I'm rolling with the Texans. I know the Colts have a solid defense, but Deshaun Watson, like Dabo Sweeney said, is the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks. That man pulls out magic tricks out of his cleats, as you can see from when he got kicked in the eye that one time. So I'm rolling with them. I mean, they seem to be getting more creative on offense. Like if you pay attention to last week's game with that weird play, it was a nice play to draw up, but it was just weird just because Duke Johnson, the way he turned around and threw the ball, it was kind of a toss or a handoff, and he turned around and threw it back, and then Deshaun Watson bombed it to Will Fuller for a touchdown. I'm expecting more of that this week against a really tough Indianapolis Colts team. And I think Duke Johnson is going to have to, get the ball rolling in terms of the run game against this Colts defense to help Deshaun Watson in the pass game out to come out with a victory.
I'm going to go opposite you. I'm going to stick with the Colts. It's obviously clear. Like I said, it's an in-divisional matchup, so this really could go anyway. That's how they are with divisional matchups in general. But I got the Colts for the simple fact that they lost a big divisional matchup last week against the Titans. So they're gonna want to.
They got blown out.
They got blown out. Yes, they're gonna have to bounce back this week in order to not only keep up with the Titans in that divisional race, which I think at this point is almost out of reach. But even if they want to just keep hopes alive in terms of making the playoffs, this is, in my opinion, a must-win for them against a divisional opponent who's kind of, other than Deshaun Watson, who's playing out of his mind and kind of, playing like a madman trying to keep this team together. Losing his best receiver, his best offensive weapon is going to hurt a lot. Regardless of how creative you get with the play calling, I just think it's going to be way too tough for him to get anything going against that defense with the lack of weapons on offense, especially having lost your best weapon. So I'm gonna pick the Colts to have a bounce back week and try to keep their playoff hopes alive and well in the AFC.
But my thing is the Texans are fighting for their playoff hopes too. I mean, their playoff hopes are a lot more slim than the Colts,
Yeah.
but they still have a fighting chance. They're sitting at 4-7, and the team in the 7th seed is the Colts at 7-4.
Yeah.
So if they win out, they can finish 9-7 and possibly come away with a playoff spot. But who knows? So
It's a long shot.
anything is possible. I'm not saying that they will make the playoffs. I know in my prediction prior to the season, I had them making the playoffs. But a lot of things happen from beginning to now. So
I agree.
I think Deshaun Watson is going to play out his mind, and that's what's going to lead to a Texans victory. I also trust Deshaun Watson a lot more than I do Phillip Rivers. But I think that defense on the Texans side is going to step up. And when I mean defense, I mean more of their front seven, and that's going to cause chaos in the pocket for Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers, we know, has been dealing with an ankle injury, and I think that's played a part in his performance last week. I think it's going to play a big factor in his performance this week as well.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention he's already a turnover machine, so there's always a possibility. But I definitely do think the Colts are going to get this one. But with that being said, we'll move on to matchup number 2. I believe between 2 8-3 teams.
One of which is from the AFC South.
Yes, the Titans, who slanked the Colts last week, and the Browns. What do you got going on in this game? What are you expecting to see?
So I think this was probably the toughest matchup out of the 3 that we are going to be covering for me to pick, and the main reason why is I do think that the Browns are going to have more rushing yards this game as a collective in terms of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in comparison to Derrick Henry. I think they're going to win that aspect of the game, and that's because the Titans struggle to stop the run. And what scares me too is the Browns are getting back Myles Garrett who was playing out of his mind and playing as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and that's adding to Olivier Vernon coming off of a solid performance against the Eagles, and I forget who else in that pass rush who had a big game as well. But just build off of that and adding a Defensive Player of the Year player in Myles Garrett coming off of COVID IR, it's scary, and I was leaning that way. But I trust Ryan Tannehill a lot more than that dude Baker Mayfield at this point, and that the Cleveland's pass defense is terrible. Denzel Ward, I believe, is out for the game, and he's probably their best chance in that secondary to defend anything. So I'm expecting a big game from Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis. I know Jonnu Smith is out, but I don't see that as a problem for the Titans.
I'm actually surprised that you said you think this is going to be the closest matchup of the week that we're choosing between, because I actually think I think the Titans, in my opinion, are going to blow the Browns out. The Titans seem to be rolling again. They're getting their offense going. Derrick Henry has 311 yards in just the last 2 weeks. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill has been more than a reliable quarterback. It seems like he's stepping into a bigger role than just being a game managing quarterback at this point, and it doesn't hurt that he has 2 great wide receivers in Corey Davis and A.J. Brown.
Great.
They're playing good enough.
I say good. AJ Brown is AJ Brown's on the border of leaning towards great. Corey Davis is good.
Corey Davis is good. AJ Brown's great. Either way, he has 2 good wide receivers, which doesn't hurt. Derrick Henry is probably the best running back in the league right now. Only person I could argue is maybe Dalvin Cook, who's been a fucking animal. So, like I said, I don't see that slowing down, and I kind of saw all that I needed to from that on the offensive side of the ball against a great Colts defense last week. I mean, you want to talk about Myles Garrett? the Colts have a guy in Darius Leonard. And, I mean, Derrick Henry was still able to get 178 yards. I just don't see the defense to do anything to stop that offense. I don't trust Baker Mayfield. And just to add icing on the cake, the Browns have only beat one above 500 team this year, and that was the Colts. It was earlier in the season. It was when the Colts were kind of struggling to really find their identity. So with that being said, they are 8-3 team, both 8-3 teams, but the level of competition that the Titans have had to face compared to the Browns is it's not even in the same round. I mean, it's alarming to me when I see an 8-3 team having only beat one opponent above 500, because it tells me they're not making much noise in the playoffs. I mean, they could prove me wrong. Obviously, you still got to play the games. I just don't see it happening.
It is what it is. So that leads us to our third and final matchup before we jump into upset and relax for the week, and that's between the Rams and the Cardinals. Another divisional matchup, another interesting matchup, because within this game we're getting another Jalen Ramsey versus DeAndre Hopkins matchup, which should ultimately determine the game. I honestly think it'll come down to that matchup, who gets the better half of one another. Whoever wins that matchup is their team's gonna win. And with that being said, I'm going to spit out some facts real quick.
Okay.
So they played a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times since 2016, and only two games. DeAndre Hopkins has taken it to Jalen Ramsey. Like, he's won the battle. Other times, Ramsey has more than held his own, and I think that's going to continue. I mean, overall, Jalen Ramsey has allowed Hopkins just 6.6 yards per target with a 54.7% catch rate on a 7.6 targets per game in coverage. So I'm not saying Hopkins won't go off, but his targets have depleted as the season has went on. Kyler's already dealing with an injury, and he didn't really look like himself against the Patriots. And I'm not expecting him to look like himself against a much better defense in the Rams. So I'm rolling with the Rams. I think Ramsey's going to win that matchup. I think Aaron Donald is going to do what Aaron Donald does and cause chaos up front. And I think Kyler's going to be on the run for a good majority of the game. So Jared Goff, spread the love on offense and make sure to keep those turnovers down, because you didn't really do that last week and you guys lost the game. So you managed to keep those turnovers down. That defense will do justice, and you guys will come away with the victory.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on this. I think it's the Rams. Aside from obviously the key matchup between DeAndre and Jalen Ramsey, I think a big key for this matchup is going to be Jared Goff. Like you mentioned, being able to really just keep the turnovers down, allow his defense to, do what needs to be done, keep the Cardinals off the board in order for his offense not to have to put up so many points against, a Cardinals offense that is capable of putting up high numbers. But really, I think the biggest thing is, like you said, it's defense. We know the Rams defense is, one of the better defenses. And I mean, we've seen the Cardinals kind of really struggle to find an identity. I mean, there's been times in this season where it's looked like they're one of the better teams in the league, and then there are games where it really doesn't look that way. Yeah, I mean, losing to a Patriots team who last week has been struggling themselves, whose defense has really been known to be the key to that team, other than this season, and then now kind of figuring out their defense against the Cardinals. So just having a bad game like that against a struggling Pats defense, not really being able to get things going, I'm not really sure how I'm going to see the Cardinals being able to get their offense going against, a defense that's been tough all season, a defense that's been consistent all season. So That's why I got the Rams in this one.
I mean, Kyler Murray might pull out some magic like he did against the Seahawks.
I think the
So,
big difference is that I think the big difference in that is that the Seahawks were missing like their the best receivers or best corner. Oh, I'm sorry, the Bills were missing their best corners, and in this case, it's going to be Jalen Ramsey
but
covering
I'm talking
DeAndre
the
Hopkins.
Bills, but then I'm also talking about the Seahawks too. He came out with the victory against the Seahawks too.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's gonna.
But again,
I think it'll be a
the
close game. I think this is
the
the
Rams have a better
closest.
defense, better secondary.
I agree. I think this is the toughest matchup of the week. Similar to what you said about the Browns and the Titans. I think this is the toughest one to call. But I think the difference there is the secondary. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is a great corner, but I mean, like you said, has what he's been able to do against Jalen Ramsey compared to what he's able to do against the other corners is so far off. You know what I mean?
So out of the three games that we talked about, you think this game is going to be the closest game in terms of score?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's the toughest one to call. It was, you know what I mean?
Between for the score, I'm leaning more towards the Texans game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Titans Browns game just for what I already said. But
Yeah,
let's shift over to let's
upset.
talk about the locks.
Lock.
We leave the upsets for last.
All right.
So the locks.
So we're doing locks.
Who do you have for your lock this week?
So I am doubling down on what I said would be a blowout because I truly believe this. I think the Titans are gonna have a field day on offense. I mean, really, like I said, I think Ryan Tannehill, he's really coming to, you know, into his role really well. I mean, at this point last year, like I said, he was really just a game manager. It almost felt like, I mean, in my opinion, I question whether or not I truly believed whether this was the quarterback they wanted to go ahead and, you know, use for the future. I thought at some point, you know, they were going to try to go and grab another quarterback somewhere. And really, they've just stuck with him. They've let him get the chemistry going with that offense. He's coming to, you know, being a good quarterback.
He fits exactly what they need.
100%. He's a very good. He's a good quarterback. He's reliable. His turnover numbers aren't like insane. So he's doing, like I said, he's doing a lot more than just managing that offense.
Yeah, and prior, like I doubted the Titans this season for a good majority, mainly because I didn't really trust Ryan Tannehill. I didn't really think he was going to replicate what he did last year in that offense, and he's proved me wrong. I'll be the first one to admit it, and I'm happy for him, honestly, that he found a home in Tennessee because he had so much potential in Miami, but he ultimately didn't live up to it because not of injuries, but he also was playing under Adam Gase, and we know how that rolls. So I'm just happy that he found a home and he seems to have found success because the Titans seem like a sleeper team. I wouldn't say sleeper because they're a top 10 team at the moment, but come playoff time, I think they'll surprise some folks again for the second year in a row.
Is Ryan Tannehill elite?
I don't know. If you think Ryan Tannehill is elite, comment below. Let us know what you think. If you don't, still comment and let us know why you don't think he is.
Definitely. But I also will add, I think I'm believing and starting. I'm taking more seriously and believing in more the Titans this year than I did last year. Even though they did shock some people last year and beating the Ravens, and then ultimately losing the week after. I believe a lot more in this team than I did last year. I didn't really see it happening at all for them last year. This year, I could see them really doing, you know, what I almost thought they were going to surprise some people and do last year. But I think I can actually see them doing it this year, you know?
The only thing is the injuries on the offensive line this year, with Taylor Lewan being out for the season. And then they just need to be able to create some pass rush on the defensive end. That's what they have seemed to struggle with this season. But it's odd that they have Jadeveon Clowney on the roster, but they seem to create more pass rush when he's not playing. So I hopefully Jadeveon Clowney can get his shit together, get healthy, and help them with what he's getting paid to do, and that's ultimately stop the run and rush the passer. But for me, my lock this week is the Packers up against the Eagles. The Eagles lead the league in sacks allowed. That offensive line is terrible. So they have allowed a total. I'll tell you right now, they have allowed a total of. They're the only team to allow more than 40 sacks this season. They have 46 sacks. We already know how terrible that offense has looked just with Carson Wentz alone, with all the drama going on with him. They really have no leadership on the offensive end. Their coach, Doug Peterson, doesn't really know the identity of that team. Their best offensive player on that team is Miles Sanders, and they aren't utilizing him correctly. And honestly, this would be the matchup that he would explode because they need to exploit that Packers rush defense. And just similar to how I know the Bears weren't very successful, but David Montgomery had his biggest game against the Packers last week. Yeah. So they need to, establish the run and be able to, consistently run the ball in order to help the passing game and help the offense and help that team win the game. And that's the only way I see them winning the game. But I think Aaron Rodgers playing on a different stratosphere, and the Eagles' offensive line struggles is going to help the Packers' defensive line struggles in terms of getting some sacks, and that's going to make Aaron Rodgers' job a lot easier. And if Darius Slay struggles if he struggles like he did against DK Metcalf against Devontae Adams, there's going to be a field day. So I'm going with the Packers. Hopefully the Eagles don't prove because obviously they're in our division as a Giants fan, and we want to keep that first place going. So with that, we'll move over to our upsets of the week. I'll start just because I'm going to double down on the Houston Texans. I'm a believer in Deshaun Watson, and that's all I really got to say. Deshaun Watson, in Deshaun Watson we trust. That's all I got to say.
All right. Well, now knowing that you have automatic 2 losses this week, I got the Lions against the Bears as my upset. Right now, the Bears, even though David Montgomery had one of his best weeks, they had one of their best rushing weeks this year in general as a team. They're currently on a 5-game skid, and it really boils mostly down to the offensive play, the quarterback situation. I'm expecting the Lions to really bounce back this week against the Bears because they're also on a 2-game skid. They've really struggled on offense, which is surprising considering that is really the best part of their team. So I'm expecting them to get that, back on track against a Bears team that really just has, struggled this year. I mean, they're not completely horrible. Their record, I believe, is just a game over 500. So they're not completely terrible, but in a divisional matchup like this against a team who's got their offense going and you really can't find anything going, I mean, you're on a 5-game skip. I just don't see the Bears getting it done.
I mean, to be fair, they're on a 2-game skid, losing skid, but they haven't had one of their best offensive weapons in the DeAndre Swift, which makes things interesting in terms of running the ball, and he's really well in the passing game as well. Because his last game he played, he blew up, and they fed off of him, and they won the game. And he's been out with a concussion, and it's honestly hurt them on the offensive end. And then I believe Kenny Galladay's been out too as well. So they've really been struggling to find weapons for Matthew Stafford. I mean, Mohamed Sanu is still a solid target, but they literally picked him up off the practice squad last week because they were down on receivers. So hopefully they can turn around. I believe in Matthew Stafford a lot more than I do Mitchell Trubisky. I do expect Montgomery to continue his streak from last week. I don't expect him to have as good of a game, but I'm expecting him to have a solid game. And the Bears defense is tough. The Bears defense is tough, but Matthew Stafford is a tough quarterback, and I honestly think he's underrated. People don't give him enough credit as he deserves. But DeAndre Swift, they say, is supposed to return, and if he does return, he'll be limited at that. I think those limited touches will honestly just help Matthew Stafford on the offensive end. And they fired Matt Patricia, so there's a fire lit under that whole team, and I think that whole team has something to prove, and I think they'll come out swinging. With that, that's all we got for you guys this week. For the Week 13 pick'em. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe. Per usual. Make sure to comment. We just told you guys, if you guys think Ryan Tannehill is elite, comment. If you don't, comment. We just want to know what's your answer. We want to hear from you guys and what you guys have to say about that. But,
spoiler alert, he is.
And I'm sure Denzel over at Denzel is a big Titans fan over at the Expansion Pack podcast. So go check them out. They're a gaming podcast. If you're interested, tune in. They're funny. They know their stuff. But Denzel's a big Titans fan. So right now, I'm pretty sure if he's watching this or listening, he's saying tighten up. So
spam some tighten ups in their comments.
So I mean, we're both tightening up this week. So hopefully they can get us a W for our pick'em record, because you desperately need it over here. I was sub 500.
I'm not
2 games over 500. Someone help this man.
Dude,
I think this dude Jovan is picking his games blindly. He's like,
yeah, it's not gonna matter. Yeah, at the end of the season, I'm gonna have a better record than you. You're gonna be tight.
Bro, you're like 8 games behind me.
Don't matter.
What? Wait, hold on. Let me check. Let me check for the fans.
I've seen bigger comebacks.
You're 6 games behind me.
I've seen bigger comebacks.
So I would have to go 0-5, and you have to go 5-0, and you still be behind me.
That's okay.
Oh, thank you guys for tuning in. Watch me go 5-0 this week. Watch Jovan go 0-5 this week. Well, we can't do that because we picked some of the same teams. But anyways, just watch me go 5-0 this week. But we appreciate you guys per usual. Until next time, peace.
Peace.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.
It's your boy. Eat that pussy 445. I want all you motherfuckers to go fuck with my motherfucking main niggas, Devin and Jovan over there at the Balls Deep podcast, my nigga. You feel me? If you guys don't know them, you guys will know them. And if you guys are hating motherfuckers, you guys can go suck a mean ass fucking dick. You know what I mean? Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. They know their fucking shit. They're funny as fuck. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, the best sports podcast on the fucking planet, my nigga. You feel me? So go check them out all over social media. They're all over Apple Music. Wherever you guys get your guys' motherfucking podcasts from, Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. Go fuck with them, nigga. If you guys don't fuck with them, drink my fucking piss, bitch.